Politics and war is about to enter a nuclear winter, and I'm going to be leaking some OPSEC that isn't really OPSEC. Food prices are really high, unusually high, suspiciously high, and they are way above where they would normally be during a global war, which is about 200. During like normal peace eras, then it's about 130 to 150. So why is this? Well, one alliance is about to do something incredibly stupid, but also incredibly cool. And I'm going to explain why that is. But basically, they are about to crash the food market and send prices to the moon. They are not the first alliance to have tried this. They will not be the last. And I know that a lot of players are raging right now as they come to realize what's going to happen, and they did not buy food this time. People have expected these crashes before, and they've saved up tons of food to try and get in on the profits. And yeah, there's a lot of people that missed out this time. Very sad. If you look at the people buying food like last week, I think Singularity bought up most of it. They had a goal. People didn't realize. People weren't paying attention. And it kind of goes to show that, like, how do I put it? Game is semi-inactive right now, so a lot of people aren't doing things. And this means that people who aren't doing things, who are aware, and pull off some amazing stuff. And they haven't even started yet, right? This is blowing the whistle on them, so people can prepare a little bit. It's already like getting out in like the leadership circles and in like, I don't know, the active player circles. So really, like, the majority of the player base should know about this now. It's going to get way worse for them. So, how do you crash the food market, and why does it matter? Well, to answer that, I need to explain the food mechanics. In short, large nations produce food and small nations consume food, and this is because it requires a lot of investment. This leads to a form of reverse serfdom, where the largest nations in the game siphon 10 to 20% of everyone's revenue. This sucks, but it gets much worse because during wars, people launch lots of nukes, which stop food production. Wars also lower food consumption for a few reasons. However, if the war is a dogpile where one side outnumbers the other by a lot, then food consumption remains really high. A big war that isn't a global will also raise food consumption, because most of the game is still consuming food while none is being produced. That might explain why food prices are at 200, but why are they at 300? Well, there's been almost no food production for a year, and in a few months, we're going to run out. Here's a graph showing the total amount of food in the game. Food increases during peace and falls during wars, and then increases again afterwards. We had a huge spike in total food at the beginning of the year, then Eclipse hit TKR. Afterwards it recovered a bit, then Singularity unrose, dogpiled Syndicate and EVH. It didn't recover after this, because there were a bunch of small wars before Eclipse hit Rose. The price of food kept increasing throughout all these wars, and people were hoping the prices would fall this month. This led to two scenarios for small alliances. The poor ones stopped buying food and started eating into their stockpiles. The rich ones started selling their stockpiles while the price was high in the hope that they could buy food again after it fell. Now, I'm sure you know that's bad, but you have no clue just how bad that is. This nuclear winter has the potential to disband alliances. So how is it going to happen? Well, Singularity has stockpiled 1,800 nuclear weapons, which have the potential to stop food production for weeks. They're going to wait for the current global war to end, and then pick an alliance they don't like and nuke them for a few months. All they need to do is keep logging in and launching nukes until April, and all the food in the game will run out. However, as you should realize by now, most of the food on this graph is owned by the large alliances. They have the biggest nations and the largest stockpiles. This is only a guess, but I think the big alliances have 1.5 billion food, and the rest of the top 50 alliances have maybe 500 million collectively. The remaining 800 million is on nations and is held privately by traders. If that's accurate, then by March, everyone except the big alliances will be running out. Prices will skyrocket. I think we'll see 400 PPU by the end of February, and it could get as high as 500 or 600 by March. This is prohibitively expensive for most alliances. It might be more profitable for them to switch to producing resources rather than sticking with commerce. Some alliances are already taking on insane losses. For example, Camelot has bought 40 million food this week at 300 PPU. It's ARPSEC, but it doesn't really matter. It's normal to buy it at 150, so let's say only the extra 150 is a loss. That means we have lost 6 billion, and 4 billion of that was to a single whale in Rose Sphere. That is a huge loss, right? For some small alliances, that is the cost of losing a war. But if we ran out of food in March, we would lose 3 billion a week, either by switching off commerce or not using food, which reduces your revenue by 33%. The alliances that are going to be affected by this will effectively be losing wars. Some people are expecting prices to freeze when the price of buying food is the same as redeeming a credit for food. Those people are wrong, but some of them will become very rich because of the mistake. Credits are affected by supply and demand, just like food, but because they can be redeemed for resources, they must always be more valuable than all other resources. It would be silly if you could buy a credit and then redeem it for food for cheaper than buying food normally. That means that credits will rise with food prices and exert a tiny bit of downward pressure on them. Now, if you sell credits, this might all be news to you because people don't redeem credits for resources that often. And that's the problem. The demand for credits is about to increase exponentially, and the supply is limited because only so many people will spend money on the game. The people buying credits right now are actually brilliant because it's a safe investment. If Singularity sells all their nukes tomorrow, you don't lose a ton of money. If Singularity does nuke people, you can redeem the credits for food for cheap because the price will rise higher than the credits. And if you buy enough of them, you can sell the extra ones for higher than the price of food because it will be pushed higher. For example, if food increases by 100 PPU, then the credit prices will match it and go up by 10 mil. And by telling you all of this, I'm going to drive the credit price higher as well. If you hadn't realized, this video is essentially and unintentionally food crisis accelerationism. Now, aside from everyone running out of food and losing lots of money, why might this be bad for the game? Well, it's going to transfer huge amounts of wealth from small nations to large ones, and this means it will take much longer to catch up and participate in the game's events. Furthermore, the small alliances that run out of food will lose a lot of members. Do you stay in a rank 50 alliance and lose 33% of your revenue a day, or join a top 10 alliance and lose nothing because they have free food? Some people think this is a sphere issue, like the top 10 will help their allies and share their stockpiles. I don't think this is going to happen. A lot of spheres are very large, but not very close. It's more likely they will not work together, and the worse the crisis gets, the worse their relationships will get. The big alliances will justify this internally by saying they're not sharing food for security because there could be another food crisis in 6 months, and they want to be prepared. That's not the real reason though. The cold hard truth is they want to wreck all these other alliances because the more they struggle and collapse, the more members they get, and the fewer opponents they'll need to fight in the future. By the end of the nuclear winter, there will be a lot of tension and resentment between alliances. So the small alliances will resent the big ones, allies will resent those that didn't help them, and small nations will resent the admins for having this mechanic. I would not be surprised if hundreds of nations quit. Enough doom and gloom though, there is a silver lining to this event, which is why I think people have been looking forward to it. This will create a lot of stories and interactions between alliances. You could think of it like a crossover between Frostpunk and politics and war. Are you going to prepare and weather the storm, or do nothing and be consumed by it? Are you going to accept lots of new members, which will reduce your food supply and risk failure? Are you going to ration your food to the largest nations with the biggest revenues, and let the smallest nations become discontent? Sadly, I've spoiled at least one storyline. So a lot of alliances were lying to their allies this week and buying food from them when they didn't know this was going to happen. Now they know why, and that they were going to be left out in the cold. So yeah, events like this are awesome because they give people choices and test relationships, and that's what this game is all about. So yeah, have fun, enjoy the nuclear winter, save food if you can, and maybe credits. I wish you all the best. And, Singularity might not nuke anyone. That is still definitely an option. Um, it's unlikely, but it's definitely an option. They've already made everyone anxious, so they've already got some of the benefits of the event. Without the huge losses in the lower tier and by small people.